last couple of years, I've worked with Legacy Ministries on the Art Corps, on which we put on creative summer camps for at-risk youths and kids in juvenile detention centers. Let me just pause and say that we're all very fortunate to be in this room that we have not been in juvenile detention centers because I don't know how much you know about them, but they're not that hard to get into, and once you're in the system, they're extremely hard to get out, which is what I want to talk about today. So, a lot of kids are in for, like normal things like drug use or even like shoplifting, things like that. But there are a lot of kids who are also in the system simply because maybe their parents rejected them and they grow up in foster homes, and then just one day they happen to have a burst of anger and got in a fight, and that's the reason why they're in the juvenile detention centers. One special story to me was of a few years ago in 2014. There was a young kid named Matthew. He was 16 years old at the time, and he told me his story. When he was 14, his parents gave him some money to buy flowers for his girlfriend, so he walked down to the flower shop, got his flowers, had a nice arrangement of flowers, and was walking back to his house when he heard a gunshot. And as he came around the corner, a man ran by, handed him a gun, and just ran away. And he was really confused, obviously, at this point, and saw a man lying in the street, bleeding from a gunshot wound. And as he approached the man, he wasn't even hardly standing over him when the police drove up, saw him with the gun, and he was convicted and had been in the system for 2 years, even though he had done nothing wrong. The reason it's so hard to, once you're in the system, to get out is because the juvenile detention systems, our facilities, use what's called a punitive system of punishment. So this means that they reward good behavior and they punish bad behavior with a point system. So you do something good, you get points. You do something bad, they take away your points. And you have to get through the entire system to get out of juvie. The reason this is not effective at all is because it just continues to reinforce the kids' failure mentality. Their whole lives they've been told that they're not good enough or that they're just failures, and when they come into the system and keep messing up and losing all their points, it just continues to reinforce that. And it never addresses the deep-rooted issue that the kids are facing that caused them to be there in the first place. And so then that deep-rooted issue continues to cultivate anger, and then they'll, one day the anger will burst, they'll get into another fight, and they'll be right back where they started. All their points are gone. They've got to start the whole system over again. So now that we know what is wrong with the juvenile detention centers, we'll move on to what we at Legacy Ministries do that is so much more effective. Instead of this punitive system, we use what's called a restorative system, and we try to subtly encourage them to be creative, and to also, we surround them with community and attempt to love them as Christ has loved us. By doing this, we are able to help them find a more positive self-image, and once they find that self-image, then they can actually start to see the light of Christ in them, because God is a creative God, and when we act in our creativity, we are acting in the image of God. Even if they know that or not, that's what they're doing. And so helping them to be creative, giving them a voice, and taking them seriously helps them to just boost their positivity in themselves. As I was talking to Miriam Overholt, who was the former director of Legacy Ministries and now the director of Pottery Works, she reminded me of a story of a kid named Thomas Savage who attended the camps a few years ago. At camps, Thomas learned to play the guitar and was pretty good at it, and he really enjoyed the guitar. But nothing really more than just, the joy from playing guitar came out of the week of camp. Later on, Thomas was arrested and sent to prison. But in prison, he was able to continue to play his guitar because that was really his only source of a positive self-image that he had in himself. Later, a prison ministry team came to that prison and were speaking about the life that Jesus Christ brought, and Thomas remembered the message we had given him at Legacy Camp and connected that with his positive self-image of playing the guitar. Now he has accepted Christ in his life and is now a worship leader at a church here in Wichita, where Legacy Ministries is. So if you'll notice in this story, during the week of camp, nothing more really happened than Thomas learned how to play the guitar, and he felt better about himself because he realized he could do something. He was unique, he was special. But this seed that started at Legacy Camps was able to cultivate later, and he was able to connect the light of Christ with that positive self-image that he had. So to wrap up, so the Juvenile Detention Center, they are not helping kids as they should, and they're not helping kids to become better and to get through the deep-rooted pain that's caused them to be in the system. But we, even as normal people, can help them much more, maybe more than we realize, simply by letting them be creative and showing them love, taking them seriously. Richard Broadley, the current director of Legacy Ministries, said it like this: most facilities focus on the symptoms, either good behavior or poor behavior, rather than on the often deep-rooted causes. Youths are expected to work hard enough to make positive self-change, but without the hope of Christ, this is nearly impossible. To back all this up, I'd like to show you a chart here. So as you can see, we've got the, on the left, your left, is the percentage of successful outcomes after the arrest. You'll see rearrest here. On your left is kids that were in the punitive system, and the blue is those that were the restorative justice system. So you can see in all of these categories that it is higher with the restorative system, and that's because instead of just continuing to beat into these kids that they're failures, it's helping them to realize that they're not failures and that they can move on and become something